of the fascinating, and I think extremely unusual things about Johann Sebastian Bach was his consciousness of the position he held in the music of his time, even if no one else at his time thought so about him. During his lifetime, Bach was famous as an organist, but basically nobody paid any attention to him as a composer, and those people who were aware of him as a composer thought of him as a kind of old fogey, writing golden oldies rather than new music, as his more famous sons did. Bach, his place in musical history comes at the very end of a period. So Bach kind of, in his own music, sums up all the music of the time that he was born into and that lasted into his lifetime. Other composers like his sons, or also like Handel, were writing in maybe a more modern style than Bach. And Bach, obviously, based on what he wrote, saw part of his role as representing what was great about the music of his time. So towards the end of his life, but not only toward the end of his life, also earlier, he had a practice of compiling collections of pieces in a certain form that seemed to be kind of manuals, almost teaching manuals, or representative examples of what is possible in that particular form. He did that with solo cello music in his 6 suites. He did that with solo violin music in his 3 sonatas and 3 partitas for unaccompanied violin. He did that in many of his harpsichord collections. He did that in what we know as the B minor Mass, which he compiled from various pieces that he had written at very different times, and it's doubtful that he ever expected it to be performed as a single piece. But maybe the greatest example of this is the last big project he worked on, which he called the Art of Fugue, which is a collection of 14 fugues, plus other types of contrapuntal pieces, little contrapuntal pieces, for which he didn't specify an instrumentation. He wrote it out without any indication of what instrument or instruments should play this music. So maybe he didn't even intend it for performance at all, but simply for study. One interesting thing is all the pieces in this collection are based on a single theme, although it's not always obvious that it's the same theme. And then the last piece, which is the one we're performing, which he didn't complete, his son, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, assumed that it's not complete because his father died, and that this was the last music he was working on. Today, we think differently. For one thing, C.P.E. Bach was nowhere near Bach when he was ill and died. He lived in Berlin, and Bach, his father, lived in Leipzig. So he had no reason to know that for sure. But now it seems very likely that Bach left it unfinished deliberately, perhaps so that people studying this whole manual, The Art of Fugue, could try out what they'd learned, the skills that they had developed in completing this piece. It's a fugue with 3 separate subjects that appear in sequence. One gets played through, the next one gets played through, and the third one gets played through, and that's where it breaks off, where those 3 themes are played simultaneously. And apparently there was going to be a 4th theme that's hinted at earlier in the piece. Now, because I wanted to do this on this program, this piece that has no indication of instrumentation, I needed to have a way for the orchestra to play it. So I looked at a variety of orchestrations that I didn't think were really appropriate for this particular occasion. And I decided to, as an exercise, to do it myself. So I prepared an orchestration for basically the same instrumentation as in the Schubert symphony that we're playing.